All right, welcome to the deep dive. We're going to do things a little differently today.
Oh.
Yeah, we're diving deep into the world of Makam Suresh Kumar, specifically his spiritual writings.
Oh.
But here's the twist. We're not just going to, read them and give our take.
Right.
We're going to look at them through the eyes of others.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so we have letters, testimonials, even comments from scholars and students who've been impacted by his work.
So it's like we're getting a multifaceted view of his teachings.
Exactly, like a puzzle.
I like that.
Where each piece gives us a clearer picture.
Makes sense.
So, to kick things off, we have this fascinating letter from Dr. T.S. Krishnamurthy, written way back in December 2007.
Oh, wow, 2007.
Yeah, and Dr. Krishnamurthy is not just anyone. He's a retired professor of Sanskrit from Bangalore University.
Oh, so he's coming at this with a deep understanding of ancient wisdom and spiritual traditions.
Exactly. And right away you see that in his language he uses terms like jnana and paramatma.
Right, those are pretty central concepts in Hindu philosophy.
I was hoping you could break those down for our listeners who might not be familiar with them.
Sure. So jnana basically refers to the knowledge of reality, the true nature of reality and the self.
Okay.
And paramatma is another term for the supreme self, God, the ultimate reality,
I see.
So right off the bat, Dr. Krishnamurthy is placing Suresh Kumar's work within this rich philosophical framework.
It's like he's using his academic lens to really focus on the deeper meaning behind Suresh Kumar's words.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's another thing that really stood out to me in his letter.
What's that?
The emphasis on the role of the guru.
Ah, the spiritual teacher.
Exactly. And it's interesting because Dr. Krishnamurthy talks about it, and Suresh Kumar himself acknowledges the influence of his own gurus in his writings.
Yeah, that's a key concept in so many spiritual traditions.
Yeah.
The idea that a guide, a mentor, is crucial on the path.
Right. Like having someone who's been there before you.
Exactly, to help you navigate.
To illuminate the way. Yeah.
And, it makes you wonder if Suresh Kumar is maybe building upon these ancient traditions, but presenting them in a way that's more accessible to modern seekers.
That's a great point.
Because he himself had these gurus, these teachers.
Right. So he's drawing from that lineage.
Right.
And then Dr. Krishnamurthy goes on to quote the Bhagavad Gita.
Oh, wow.
He says it contains, in a condensed form, all philosophical and psychological wisdom.
Huge statement.
It is. It's like he's saying that Suresh Kumar's writing is tapping into that same wellspring of knowledge.
Wow.
Yeah, and then he talks about happiness, bliss, compassionate love, these themes that are central to many spiritual teachings, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Including Suresh Kumar's.
Yeah, and what I find interesting is that he highlights Suresh Kumar's focus on silence.
Okay.
Desirelessness and meditation as a path to those states.
As a way to actually experience those things.
Yeah. And those practices are found in various traditions, but Suresh Kumar seems to be emphasizing them in a unique way.
It's making me even more curious to hear what Suresh Kumar himself has to say about all of this.
Yeah, me too.
To have a scholar of Dr. Krishnamurthy's caliber analyze your work,
right,
and highlight these profound connections, it must have been pretty amazing.
Yeah, I'd be honored.
So we actually have Suresh Kumar's response letter.
Oh, wow.
It's dated January 2009.
Okay.
And his tone is surprisingly humble.
Humble.
Yeah, very humble. He attributes any wisdom in his writing to the grace of his own master and preceptor.
Interesting.
So he's not claiming credit.
Right.
But pointing to that lineage again.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and there's this beautiful phrase he uses to describe Dr. Krishnamurthy.
Okay.
He says, in true sense, Jnana Yogi, Siddhaka of Jnana Yoga, who realized that truth through this medium of practice, which is very rare to find.
Wow, it's like he's saying that Dr. Krishnamurthy embodies the principles he's writing about.
Yeah, it's a huge compliment.
And it also suggests a deep respect between them.
Yeah, for sure.
Mutual respect.
Before we move on to their later correspondence, was there anything else that stood out to you in that letter?
Well, there's this one line that really struck me, and it's quite poetic, he writes. May the formless infinite, which has become the myriad forms of life.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's like an invitation to contemplate
the vastness of creation.
Yeah, and how everything's interconnected.
Okay, so we have this initial exchange, scholar and spiritual writer. Where do we go from here?
Well, let's jump ahead a bit.
Okay.
To Dr. Krishnamurthy's letter from January 2009. Remember how he seemed so intrigued by Suresh Kumar's work?
Mm-hmm.
Well, over time, that intrigue seems to deepen into real admiration.
I'm curious to hear more. What makes you say that?
He uses this phrase. He describes the writing as a torrential spiritual flow of thoughts to help the human being to raise himself from manhood to godhood.
Torrential spiritual flow. That's powerful.
It is, right?
Yeah. It sounds like he's saying Suresh Kumar's words have this transformative power.
Exactly. Like a force, that can propel the reader towards a higher state of being.
And then he goes on to call the writings Gospels.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Gospels. That's a pretty weighty term.
It is. It suggests that he sees them as having this profound, spiritual significance.
Yeah.
And then there's this, he mentions awakened Kundalini.
Oh, really?
And I know that's a term from yogic traditions, but to be honest, I need a little refresher.
Sure. So in yogic philosophy, Kundalini is this primal energy that's dormant at the base of the spine.
Okay.
And when it's awakened, it's said to rise through these energy centers in the body, and it leads to, spiritual awakening, enlightenment.
So he's saying that Suresh Kumar's writings might actually have the power to awaken this energy in readers.
That's what he seems to be implying.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It adds a whole other layer to what we're talking about.
Right. But even as he's talking about these mystical aspects,
yeah,
he keeps coming back to Suresh Kumar's devotion to his masters.
Right, that lineage again.
Yeah.
Like it's a key part of what makes the teaching so powerful.
Yeah.
You mentioned another quote from Dr. Krishnamurthy's 2010 letter, something about the student-teacher dynamic from the Bhagavad Gita.
Oh, right. He says, even Lord Krishna obliges Arjuna only when the latter declares himself as disciple and an obedient disciple and seeks the truth.
So it's like true spiritual knowledge comes through that relationship.
That trust.
That surrender.
Yeah, the student-teacher dynamic is so important.
Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit and talk about Suresh Kumar's second letter to Dr. Krishnamurthy.
Yeah.
This one's dated December 2010, and it still has that humility, but it feels a bit different.
Different how?
He goes beyond expressing gratitude, and he starts sharing more about his personal practices and experiences.
Oh, so we're getting a more personal glimpse.
Yeah, and he talks about some pretty complex concepts.
What?
Things like yogic human engineering, conscious levels and state and stages, and unison and balance for this existence.
Wow, that's getting pretty advanced.
It is. I'm not even sure where to begin unpacking all of that. But
it's fascinating, though.
It is. It's like we're peeking into a world that usually remains hidden.
Right, and even as he's delving into these advanced ideas, he still emphasizes the role his masters played in guiding him.
So that mentorship piece is still so central.
Absolutely.
It's a constant thread.
Yeah.
Now, I think it's time to bring in a fresh perspective.
Oh, okay.
Someone who comes from a completely different world than academia or spirituality, a judge.
A judge.
A judge.
Wow, okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
His name is Judge B. Yoginath, and he's a retired judge and a former registrar of Karnataka Lokayukta.
So he brings a unique perspective.
For sure. So I have to ask, what would make a judge, someone who deals with logic and evidence,
right,
take an interest in Suresh Kumar's spiritual writings?
Well, it seems that Judge Yoginath was deeply impressed by Suresh Kumar's teachings on a range of topics.
Okay.
Including Brahma Vidya, mind power, and Raja Yoga.
Okay, I'm familiar with yoga,
right,
but some of those other terms are new to me.
Sure. Brahma Vidya essentially refers to the knowledge of Brahman, which is the ultimate reality in Hindu philosophy.
Okay.
And Raja Yoga is a path of yoga that emphasizes meditation and mental discipline as a way to achieve self-realization.
I see. So Suresh Kumar's teachings are drawing people from all these different backgrounds.
Yeah, it's
with different areas of expertise. It's really interesting.
And Judge Yoginath, he says something really striking. He says, particularly your articles on the realization of self within a short span of time are nothing but an innovation in the field of spiritual life.
He uses the word innovation.
Yeah.
That's interesting, especially coming from a judge.
Right. It's like he's saying that Suresh Kumar is presenting a new perspective.
Like a faster path to spiritual realization.
Yeah, maybe a faster path than what's traditionally been taught.
Okay, and then this is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
He expresses awe at Suresh Kumar's ability to transmit psychic power.
Psychic power.
Psychic power.
Wow, okay.
And to awaken others' minds to spirituality.
That's quite a statement.
It is.
And he doesn't stop there. He goes on to delve into some pretty detailed Vedantic concepts.
Wow. So he's not just a casual observer.
No, he really seems to get it.
He has a deep understanding.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have the scholar, the spiritual writer, and now a judge all weighing in on Suresh Kumar's work.
It's like each perspective adds another layer to the puzzle.
It does. And just when you think we've covered all the angles, we have one more voice to consider. A student of Suresh Kumar's named Raghavendra.
Oh, a student.
A student.
So we're getting the perspective of someone who's experiencing the teachings firsthand.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is that Raghavendra's comment is not about Suresh Kumar's writing directly. It's about Judge Yoginath's testimonial.
Oh, interesting.
Okay, so he expresses astonishment at the judge's insights, specifically his ability to grasp these subtle nuances of Suresh Kumar's teachings.
Wow.
Yeah, and he uses this phrase, fine granularity.
Fine granularity. That's pretty precise.
It is. It's like he's impressed by the depth of understanding that someone outside of their spiritual circle has achieved.
And he ends with this really powerful statement. He says, how can one really point out this truth in such fine granularity? It is possible only because of his height of spiritual status, the sharpness of his mind, a genuine seeking of God realization in his heart.
So he's not just praising the judge's intellect,
Right.
but he's recognizing the inner qualities that allow him to connect with the deeper meaning.
That's a powerful observation.
It is. It's really amazing. So we've gone from scholarly analysis to personal testimonials, from ancient wisdom to these modern interpretations, and now we have this perspective of a student who's actually experiencing the teachings. It's like we're starting to piece together this more holistic understanding of who Suresh Kumar is and what makes his work so compelling.
Absolutely, and I think it raises some really interesting questions.
He does.
About the nature of spiritual growth, the path to self-realization.
What's possible, what's not possible.
Yeah, we'll delve into those questions and more
when we return for part 2 of this deep dive.
Sound good.
All right, we'll be right back.
Looking forward to it. It's really amazing how Suresh Kumar's writings have resonated with so many people from like such diverse backgrounds.
I know, right?
You have a scholar, a judge, a student, all expressing such a deep connection to his teachings.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder, is there something truly unique about his approach, you know?
It's like we're seeing all these different facets of this spiritual gem.
Yeah, it's definitely making me rethink some of my own assumptions about the path to spiritual growth.
Oh, how so?
Well, you know, I've always thought of it as this long, arduous journey, right?
Right.
It requires like years of dedicated practice discipline.
Yeah, I guess so.
But listening to these letters, especially what Judge Yoginath said about innovation and the possibility of achieving self-realization in a short span of time,
right,
it makes me wonder if there might be other possibilities out there.
Yeah, it's a question worth exploring for sure.
Yeah, like is it possible to accelerate spiritual growth? And if so, what are the key ingredients?
Well, one thing that keeps coming up is mentorship.
Yeah, the guru.
Yeah, Suresh Kumar constantly talks about the guidance he received from his masters, and even Dr. Krishnamurthy brings it up in his analysis.
But having a guide, a mentor.
Right, someone who can help you navigate the complexities of the spiritual path.
Exactly. It's like having a map and compass in a dense forest, you know?
Yeah, I like that analogy.
You avoid the pitfalls, you stay on track, you reach your destination more efficiently.
And it's not just about avoiding obstacles.
Right.
It's about having someone who can transmit wisdom, insights that might take you, years to discover on your own.
That's a good point.
So yeah, it does make you wonder if the presence of a true guru can somehow amplify or accelerate the process of spiritual growth.
Right. But I mean, mentorship is just one piece of the puzzle, right?
Sure.
We also have this whole intellectual and philosophical framework. I mean, these letters are filled with references to the Bhagavad Gita, Upanishads, these ancient texts.
It's clear that his teachings are deeply rooted in those traditions.
Absolutely. So it's not just about personal experience, mystical insights,
Right.
It's about grounding those experiences in a really rich philosophical framework.
It's a time-tested framework.
Yeah. But then we also have these really intriguing concepts that Suresh Kumar mentions in his second letter.
Right.
Like yogic human engineering.
Conscious levels and state and stages.
Yeah, it's like he's blending ancient wisdom with with more modern interpretations of consciousness, psychology.
It is fascinating to see that, how he's bridging those two worlds.
Yeah, like he's saying the path to self-realization isn't static.
Right.
It's constantly evolving, adapting.
Yeah, to new understandings of the human mind and spirit.
I think that's what makes his work so appealing to people from all these different backgrounds.
It could be.
He's honoring the wisdom of the past while also offering a fresh perspective
That resonates with modern seekers.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes this deep dive so thought-provoking.
Absolutely.
It's not just about learning about Suresh Kumar's teachings.
Right.
It's about exploring the nature of spiritual growth itself.
Yeah. What are the possibilities? What lies beyond the traditional frameworks, right?
And it's a reminder that the path to self-discovery, it's a deeply personal one.
It is.
What works for one person might not work for another.
Exactly, and that's okay.
The key is to keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep an open mind.
I agree.
So after diving into these letters, what are some of the most significant insights or takeaways that stand out to you?
For me, it's the recognition that there might be multiple paths to spiritual growth.
Okay.
And those paths might be more diverse and dynamic than we've traditionally been led to believe.
I agree. It's like we're being challenged to expand our definition of what's possible.
And it's also a reminder that while personal experience is essential, having a guide, a mentor,
and value
can be so helpful on this journey.
It's like the difference between trying to navigate a maze blindfolded and having someone who can point you in the right direction.
I love that.
Yeah, but I think what's really resonating with me the most is this idea of innovation in spiritual life.
What do you find so compelling about that?
Well, it's the sense that the ancient teachings, they're not stagnant. They're alive, they're evolving, and there's room for new interpretations
and approaches.
Yeah, that speak to the needs of modern seekers.
It's like we're standing at this intersection of tradition and modernity. And witnessing these new pathways to self-realization emerge.
Yeah, drawing from both the wisdom of the past and the insights of the present.
Exactly.
And I think that's a really powerful and hopeful message.
It is.
But with all this talk about innovation and accelerated growth,
right,
I can't help but wonder, is there a risk of oversimplifying the spiritual path?
What do you mean?
Like making it sound like a quick fix or a shortcut to enlightenment.
Yeah, that's a valid concern.
Because spiritual growth, it is a process, right? It requires commitment, effort.
And often a willingness to face our shadows, our limitations.
Exactly. It's not always about blissful states and mystical experiences, right? Sometimes it's about confronting our deepest fears and insecurities.
And yet at the same time, these letters seem to suggest that maybe the journey doesn't have to be as long and arduous as we've been led to believe.
It's interesting.
It is.
Yeah, like maybe it's about finding that balance between effort and grace.
Right.
Discipline and surrender.
Yeah, and recognizing that the path unfolds in its own time, even if that time frame might be shorter than we expect.
Yeah, this whole conversation has really opened my mind to new possibilities.
Me too.
But let's bring it back to our listener for a moment.
Okay.
What do you think are some of the key takeaways for someone who's listening to this deep dive and maybe feeling inspired to explore these ideas further?
Well, I'd say the most important takeaway is that the path to self-discovery, it's not a one-size-fits-all journey.
Okay.
There's no right or wrong way to approach it.
And there's no need to feel limited by traditional frameworks or timelines.
Exactly. If something resonates with you, if it sparks your curiosity, explore it. Don't be afraid to challenge your assumptions. Step outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah. It's about finding what works for you.
What speaks to your heart and soul.
Exactly.
And perhaps as we've seen in this deep dive, the most unexpected paths can lead to the most profound discoveries.
I love that. You know, it's incredible to think about how much ground we've covered in this deep dive.
Yeah, we started with these letters, these little snippets, these glimpses into people's thoughts.
Like breadcrumbs.
Yeah, and now we're having this huge conversation about spiritual growth, mentorship, innovation. It's amazing.
I know, it's like we stumbled on something really profound.
And it all comes back to Makam Suresh Kumar.
Right, and the impact his writings have had.
People, yeah.
I mean, think about it. We have a scholar steeped in these ancient traditions. We have a judge who who approaches the world with this logical, discerning mind.
Right, completely different perspectives.
And then we have a student, someone who's actually living, embodying these teachings.
Yeah, and they all express this deep respect.
Admiration, yeah.
For Suresh Kumar's work.
It's got to tell us something.
It really does. It speaks to the authenticity, the depth of his teaching.
And it's not just about the praise, it's about the insights that they're gleaning from his writings, you know?
Exactly, yeah, like Dr. Krishnamurthy, highlighting those core themes: silence, desirelessness, meditation.
Right. And Judge Yoginath talking about the potential for accelerated spiritual growth.
Innovation in spiritual life.
Yeah, and then Raghavendra, the student, being so impressed by the judge's understanding.
Right, the fact that someone from such a different world could connect so deeply with Suresh Kumar's teachings.
It's like they're all pointing to this truth.
Yeah, this underlying truth
that transcends their
perspectives.
Yeah, this truth that speaks to the universal longing for meaning, connection.
Law realization, yeah.
Now, what's so fascinating is that Suresh Kumar himself never claims to be the source of this truth.
No, he's always pointing back to his own masters.
Right, the lineage.
Emphasizing that transmission of wisdom from teacher to student.
It's like he's saying, don't look at me, look at the source.
Look at the teachings.
Look at these teachings that have been passed down through generations.
Yeah, and that humility, I think that's a huge part of what makes his work so compelling.
It's a good point. It's a reminder that true wisdom often comes through surrender, you know.
Letting go.
Letting go of our ego.
And connecting with something greater.
Yeah, something bigger than ourselves.
And that's a message that resonates, I think, regardless of your background, your beliefs.
It's universal.
It is.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you hope our listener takes away from this conversation?
I'd say the most important takeaway is that the path to self-discovery, it's a journey worth taking.
Absolutely.
And it can take so many forms.
There's so many forms.
Yeah, don't be afraid to explore, to question, to find what resonates with you.
Don't be afraid to break free from those traditional frameworks, those timelines.
Exactly. If something speaks to you, if it sparks your curiosity, follow it.
And if you're lucky enough to find a teacher, a mentor, embrace that.
Embrace that opportunity, yeah.
With an open heart and a curious mind.
Beautifully said.
And maybe this deep dive will spark curiosity in some of our listeners to explore Suresh Kumar's writings for themselves.
I hope so.
Who knows? Maybe they'll find their own insights, embark on their own journeys.
That's the beauty of it all.
Yeah, the path unfolds in its own time, own way.
But the most important thing is to begin.
To take that first step. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this incredible deep dive into the world of Makam Suresh Kumar and his profound teachings.
Exactly.
Until next time, keep seeking, keep exploring, and keep those hearts and minds wide open.
I love it.